So today is a very special day. It's where the saga ends, maybe. For me, it was 4.5 years. For Anat, 6.5 years in the making. So this particular book started a very long time ago and evolved and changed and grew and changed and evolved, and now it is actually on Amazon. I guess that's the note of success these days. Everybody seems to use Amazon. So here it is, Amazon. All right. So those of you who have read the book already, please raise your hands. It's like a flash of mine. Okay. All right. So we have our people who have read it already. Okay. And if you finished it, then you know it is a book about dreams. Dreams that were realized, and some dreams that were not realized. Okay? And the journey took a great deal of sacrifice, persistence, idealism, a mission, and always that thought of freedom and music. And the journey really is two trails in my mind. Okay? One, Anat's dream of becoming a professional musician, okay, more than a professional concert pianist, and her father, whose dream was to leave the Soviet Union, the Soviet regime, and go to Israel. And unfortunately, Anat's father died just 2 months ago. He was, through it all, he was certainly with Anat. She used to call him continuously and ask questions. She'll tell you about that, I'm sure. Okay, so I am very pleased then to start our program. And our program basically is about various passages in the book which we felt were important and maybe hit certain points, themes perhaps that we were thinking about, or plot segments, etc. But I'd like Anat to say a few words, and from this point on, if you'd like to add anything.
I can read.
You can read, okay. Okay. So we're going to start.
And I will answer your questions.
Yes, okay. So our first reading is about her early education with her father, okay? So it takes on, her early education is unlike many of ours. It takes on a more serious tone. And in sometimes, although Anat and I had a little debate about this, a questionable technique. But she's going to read it to you, and then we can start. Yes, it is on page 111 and 112. Oh, the toast! Toast! Oh, goodness sakes, the toast! Thank you so much. To Anat and to the success of the book, for all her very hard work, her persistence, her diligence, etc., etc., etc. Okay.
And the editor.
Right, thank you.
And the hostess.
And the ghostwriter. And the friend who kept reading all her notes, meaning me, on my vacation.
Oh, wow.
Okay, excuse me?
Dear friend, for friend, my dear loyal friend, my book wouldn't be possible without you. I can't thank you enough.
Go, Fran.
David, maybe you want to sit here, not to stand.
Okay. Would anybody like to sit? It's a very nice rocking chair, but
Yeah.
no? Okay.
There's also one that would sit in that chair, you get a better view. No? It's the one my seat. And then I'll go sit there.
You know,
You got the
Okay,
rocking
everybody.
chair.
We're going to talk about the cover now. There's a painting right above the man.
That's beautiful.
right. I think I was lucky 3 times. I found wonderful editor. I found wonderful cover creator, and my artist who put all this together, and for Amazon and for ebook and for print book. And I think I really was lucky. Without these people, it would not be the same. And when the lady who created it, her name is Rosemary Gelber, she lives in Summit. I heard about her.
Could you talk a little bit louder, please? Okay, okay.
Forgive me. I knew about her. Before that, she was a photographer. And she was recommended for me for Michael's and Jonathan's bat mitzvah to photograph. And then she became a painter. So I went to see her and I showed her my manuscript and she said, Anat, I never did book cover. This is actually not my thing. I don't know what exactly you want from me. And I told her, it is always first time.
That's how she lured me.
And that's how we started, and I'm very happy with the cover. Yeah, she did a beautiful job. Right. Okay,
So page 111, if you happen to have the book, all right, so you could just follow along. My book club is here from Maplewood, by the way. This is my Maplewood group. They read the book in preparation for today.
Yes, we are very dedicated.
Okay.
one evening there was a knock at our door. When Mama opened the door, there stood a woman, a stranger to my mother. Before Mama could speak, the woman held out her hand and said, "Do you see what is in my hand? They are the teeth of your son, of my son. Your daughter punched my son and knocked out his teeth." Mama called me to the door. "Luba, did you punch a boy today?" "Yes, Mama. I have told you over and over not to fight, to hold that temper of yours. I want you to grow up to be a nice young lady, not a hooligan." Mama continued lecturing me in front of that lady and assured her that I would be severely punished. Finally, pacified, she left. Papa came out the other room and asked what exactly happened and why I punched the boy. He called me dirty Jew, so I gave him a punch in his teeth. After this explanation, he had a tiny smile on his face. Mama turned to Papa and told him, "Tolik, you are raising a hooligan. Luba is only a second grader and is becoming a hooligan." No, her reaction was the right one. He called her dirty Jew. What would you like her to do? Pat him on his head? I'm glad she punched him. But she is a girl. You are raising her like a boy. To survive in this world, Luba has to grow up being feminine on the outside and manly on the inside, said Papa.
Okay. Any comment, any discussion?
Yeah, that I learned this technique from my father, who prepared me for school. And that was part of his preparation for school. He taught me where to hit.
Yeah, it's hard to hear over here, so you have to speak a little bit louder.
Louder?
Okay? Yeah.
Okay, like this.
Is that any better? Yeah. A little bit better? Okay.
I have another little passage before we go. One might ask me how I was able to withstand this humiliation. My answer would be my stable, happy life at home, where I was a princess. I knew that no matter what people said to me on the street or at school, I would come home, brush off the ugliness of outside world, and enter my world, where I will be a princess again. From the moment Papa woke up on Saturday and Sundays, he was telling jokes all day. Mama and I giggled all the time. Once I asked him why he kept joking. In this world, one can either cry or laugh. I prefer to laugh.
That was Doctor's, what's his last name? Which name should I use?
Yeshkovich. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeshkovich.
Dr.
Yeshkovich.
Yeskovich's philosophy for
Yes.
life. And in the back of the book, there are many, many, many jokes. I have a friend who didn't quite read the book, but went right away to the last couple of pages and saw that there were jokes. She said, I think I'm only going to read the jokes. Some of them were funny. Okay, next.
Okay.
Okay.
So now I will read about music.
Let me just give a little bit of background on that. At the age of 15, Anat went to Moscow to try to get into the famous Gnesin Music Academy, like our Juilliard, okay? Except it was for high school students. And it was, if you read the book, you will see that it was filled with intrigue, a little bit of deceit, but a great deal of, what can we say, determination on the part of you, your piano teacher, and your mother. Okay, I will leave you to read the book for that section. But while she was in the school, which you attended, well, first she had to be in an orphanage for 6 months, so that she could both go to school and learn and take lessons from some very wonderful professional teachers who would help her get into the Gnesin school. And so this section is about what she learned there. The Russian technique, as we know, has proven to be exemplary. There are so many wonderful pianists who come out of that particular, we say, school of learning. Alrighty? So, Anat, if you'd like to add anything?
I will read.
Okay. What page is that? So we can follow a little bit?
73.
Page 73. Okay.
My teacher, Lev Naumov, taught me how to bring a piece of music to perfection using his method. So you know your piece well? He asked me. I think so. Well, let's see. He removed a silk scarf from a hook, placed it over my eyes, and tied it at the back of my head. Try to play it now. I was in awe. Suddenly, I was blind. Don't be scared. If you know the piece well, you will be able to play it blindly. If not, then you won't. I started playing my piece twice as slowly as usual, and surprisingly went on and on. I slipped several times, but eventually finished. Good, said Naumov. Now, do you remember where you stumbled? Circle these sections and work on them. After that, repeat the piece with the scarf on and see what happens. You may still stumble in a few places, or you may play it smoothly. Also, I doubt it. For that, you would need to keep working on it. But this is the ultimate test. If you can play the piece well, blindly, you will not stumble during the performance.
So that was the technique. Try it someday, everybody. Blindfold, whatever, teaching, whatever. See if you're
Do it well.
With your eyes. Actually, I was sailing. I took a sailing lesson once or twice, and it was in Manhattan around the Statue of Liberty. And the young gentleman was from Ireland. And that's exactly what his father did to him. Blindfolded him and so that he could hear the wind and see where it was going. He didn't do it when he was with me, of course, but you know. But it was, I guess this is a technique which proven. Okay. Next one is
I didn't have my sorry, you wanted to say something?
about
This
love
is
of
a
teachers.
continuation.
About love of teachers. Part of the book deals with the great respect and love that Anat developed and had for her teachers. And I like this one because it is filled with an understanding that sometimes teachers go beyond and mean so much to you in your life. So this is a great one.
I didn't have my family with me, but I had my brilliant teachers. They were my family. And I had my piano, my friend, my love, the outlet of my emotions, the canvas of my expression, the color of my mood, the keeper of my secrets, the source of pleasure like no other. Bad news? Share it with the piano. It will absorb the pain and comfort you. A touch of depression? Pour out your sadness at the piano. It will lift your mood. Feeling blue? The piano will help you. It will give you the gift of optimism and make your life worthwhile.
Okay. How many of you have played piano?
Not
And taken
now.
lessons, etc. And do you remember ever doing, I remember once, I don't know if Marion ever remembers, my mother, if, we didn't want to practice, she would throw us in the room, close the door. Did you remember that at all, Mary?
That was Danny.
That was Danny. And I remember one day not wanting to practice and close the door. I'm pounding, and then all of a sudden, so I agree. This whole thing, when you get angry, the piano that didn't help. Yeah. What other page next?
20 years ago, when I attended a recital by Lang Lang, the renowned Chinese pianist, for the first time, I read in his biography that he started piano lessons with his father, a musician, at the age of 3. What can a piano teacher teach a 3-year-old? I wonder. When I got home that evening, I wrote down a whole list of things that can be done with such a youngster. First, a teacher must introduce them to the greatness of this instrument. Play for them the high notes, like a bird's songs, and the low notes, like a bear's footsteps. Let them hear how a melody sounds when the pedal is used. Impress them with playing very fast passages, so they can see how fast fingers can run. Play trills on the opposite registers. Kids like it. Play a very loud melody and then a very soft melody to show them the range of sounds the piano is capable of. Mesmerize them with the abilities of this incredible, sophisticated machine and make them fall in love with it. And the last about music is this.
What page is that?
83.
83. Okay.
I concluded I shouldn't follow the strict and inflexible Russian approach. I decided not to present my teaching as a bitter pill, as it is done in many Russian music schools. I wanted to present my teaching as a spoonful of sugar. On the other hand, the Russian system is proven to work. It has produced many legendary pianists. This system is like a yellow brick road. Follow it and you will emerge equipped with effortless technique, impeccable taste, and faultless style. I changed nothing about the Russian method. I just repackaged it I took the core and wrapped it in pink, perfumed wrapping paper.
And so if you want to take lessons with Anat, you will be sweetened.
Anat, could you explain one of the previous passage? I think you said trills in the opposite register. Is that right?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Trill is this. No, you so this is a trill. And on the upper register, right? And this is lower register. Kids like this.
Just going from one to the other?
uh,
Gotcha. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Michael, you taught, am I right? Piano lessons at one point?
Several years ago.
Several years ago, okay? And did you use any of these techniques?
No. Not American style.
Okay, which
Yeah, I was
is?
taught by someone who graduated from Curtis.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it was a student of Rudolf Circuit and Mieczysław
Yes.
Borszewski, my
Right,
teacher's teachers.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a grandson of
Grandson
Circle.
of.
And there is that legacy, that hierarchy with, with piano. It's like in yoga too, right? There's a whole system of one teaching the other, teaching the other. I was taught by the student of my sisters, right there? Oh, you taught by? You mean? Sachidananda was taught by your guy.
Oh, Shivananda? No, actually, there were three of them together.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
It,
All
re-
right. Got
it
it.
reminded me of biblical passage when you said,
Yes.
I was taught by so-and-so, who was taught by so-and-so, who was taught by 4 generations, you know, it was like the Old Testament.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a hierarchy.
The most famous Russian young pianist Daniil Trifonov, who gives concert in New York, and he is a laureate of 2 international competitions. One of Tchaikovsky, he received the first prize in Moscow, and one of Rubinstein received first prize in Jerusalem. And he was taught by a student of my teacher, like he was taught by my brother.
Do you have any others?
I have one about my grandfather.
Okay, which one is that?
Page 97, this is a second indent, and some page on page 90.
Okay, I'd like to read that, that's the same grandfather that the pediatrician. Suppose I read mine first,
Yeah, okay.
and then you could read yours. Okay. I was very impressed by the fact that in this book, there is a long legacy. When I first started working with Anat, and we talked about her grandfather who became a pediatrician, and from there, his daughter, Anat's mother, became a doctor, who married a doctor, okay? And had it not been for this first change in the grandfather's life, the whole trajectory of the family would have been changed. So I want to read you how that happened, okay? And it's on page 85 to 88. Alrighty. A little family history, okay? In the winter of 1903, the Jewish men of Bogopol, am I pronouncing that right? Bogopol, a shtetl in eastern Ukraine, gathered in a small synagogue that smelled of poverty and old books. They came to discuss the most pressing matter, getting a Jewish pediatrician to care for the growing number of children in the shtetl. Everything the villagers of this shtetl did, they did together. They lived together, they prayed together. They raised their children together, they grew old together. They were a community. They looked inward to their own culture for enrichment. To the outside world they appeared impoverished, but they had the treasure of their holy books. This shtetl, like all other shtetls, was a self-contained, wraparound world tailored to survive the repressive environment around it. These villages cherished 3 things: their God, and their beloved rabbi, number 1, their books, number 2, and their children, number 3. Stooped over, slow of movement, Dr. Abraham Leibowitz had advised them to start their search for a young doctor. Distressed over the future loss of this doctor to old age, knowing they could not approach Gentile doctors, they debated what steps to take to find a Jewish doctor. Finally, Meir Zalmanson, a school teacher whose keen observation of his students and his knowledge made him a respected member of the congregation, rose from his chair. I believe I have an exceptional student in my class, Lazar Lupilover. Astute in both math and science, he is one of the finest. I could see his love for children when I observed him helping younger students. His patience and compassion for them makes me think he would be a fine pediatrician. All eyes were on Meir. The thought of Lazar, one of their own, lovingly caring for their children, warmed the hearts of the congregation. Then a roar of voices. Well, how old is he? Well, when can he start his studies? How long will it take him to complete his studies? Is he in good health? How much money do we have to collect for him? For a while, there was chaos. The small space felt even more crowded. Men talked over one another, complimenting their speech with dramatic gestures, eyes rolling, exclamations. Their body language expressed all their doubts and worries. Then the rabbi raised his hand to stop the clamor and restore order. Please, each of you will have a chance to speak out. We won't take any actions until we're all in agreement. One by one, the congregation expressed their concerns. Will Lazar have enough experience after the specialization? Will he be able to carry such a big load? Will he make house calls? Where's the guarantee that after all we will have to invest in him, he will come back to us? The debate lasted long into the night. By the end of the meeting, it was determined Lazar Lupilover, my maternal grandfather, would go to Zurich to study medicine, specializing in pediatrics. Why Zurich? Why go so far? Wasn't there a medical school nearby in Odessa? That's in Russia, Ukraine. Yes, but at that time, Jews in Russia, Ukraine, and a number of other states in Eastern European were banned from universities. So Zurich it would be. The next step was to gather the money. It was not an easy task, but finally the money was collected, and Lazar went to Zurich. He didn't speak German, but he knew Yiddish, which helped him in the beginning. He had to change his shtetl clothes for regular clothes so he wouldn't look different from everyone else. He was a good-looking young man, tall, slender, with a head full of dark brown hair. Lazar worked hard, and after years of studying, he received his diploma. Then he went on to Berlin to specialize in pediatrics. There he developed a fondness for the German people, lauding them as, quote, the nicest people who have music and art, and the arts. Before Lazar left for Zurich in 1904, he had fallen in love with a lovely young woman, Liebe. So Lazar had 2 reasons for studying medicine. 1, to help his shtetl and repay the debt he owed them, and 2, to make a life, which Liebe would when he returned. In the fall of 1905, when Lazar was in Zurich, pogroms were carried throughout Odessa and the surrounding areas, including Bogopol. As reported, and the report is long, so I won't read it, but everyone was killed in that pogrom. Very few were left. And so, although Lazar was a pediatrician, he did not return to the shtetl, but went on and built a life elsewhere.
Yeah, because there was no shtetl was wiped out.
Yes, completely wiped out. Okay? And so, from that though, as I said, the trajectory of your family, its line, and what has happened afterwards was positioned in a good way.
Can I ask a question? My grandparents also came from Ukraine, and they were probably in a shtetl. They may have told me, but my brain's too rusty to remember. But Fran clearly said that they needed a doctor, and they weren't. Why were they not allowed to ask a Christian or a Gentile to come into the shtetl? It wasn't a pogrom. I mean, why were they not? Why did they not think of any doctor? Why did it have to specifically be a Jewish doctor?
Because Gentile doctors didn't care for Jewish kids.
Didn't what? Sorry. Didn't care.
Gentile doctors didn't care for Jewish kids.
Can I ask
For example, a Jewish sick child, right, could not be brought to Gentile doctor. That's how it was.
It was just forbidden.
It was, it was not common, it was maybe forbidden, it was not common. And even, you know, in every shtetl there were Jews and there were Gentiles. But they lived completely separate life. And it was two separate communities. And they don't interact with each other unless it was something to buy or something to... Right.
Thank you.
I have a question, Fran.
Yeah.
If the pogrom, if the people in the pogrom were killed, what happened to the woman he was going to marry?
No, she somehow she escaped, but already she was not in the Bogopol, and my grandfather found her, and they went to St. Petersburg.
Huh?
They went to St. Petersburg. They went to St. Petersburg.
So he did, so he found her and she wasn't dead? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He married her.
He didn't marry her.
Yes. He did marry her.
Oh, he did marry her.
Yes. Oh. He did marry her. She wasn't dead.
Yes, he did.
So
I-
he married her.
My Russian name, Luba, I was named after her. After the-
Yes.
I have a question. So as I was reading that passage, which I thought was probably one of the best ones in the book, I remember saying, well, what about what he wants? Did anybody say, do you want to be a pediatrician? Do you want to be a doctor? Because everybody is debating whether he's going to make house calls, right?
Yeah,
But did anybody ask him, like, how did he take on that role? Like, how did he accept it?
He didn't tell me that, but I assume that he was approached by the Leibovitz, Meir Leibovitz, the director of the Heder, and he was asked either if he wants to,
Okay,
and he probably did.
okay. Okay, that's an explanation, but I was sitting there like, hold on, did anybody ask me?
I have to tell you,
You do it, right?
he loved his profession.
He loved it, yes.
He loved, yes. He came home from the hospital every day by 3 p.m. And he had his midday meal, which usually consists of borscht and something else.
Yeah.
And after eating his borscht, he went for a walk, and after that he could do whatever he wanted. But parents kept coming with sick children from the neighborhood, and he gave them prescriptions and never charged them. He never accepted money for what he did. So the hospital paid him, and besides that, nothing. You know, at the end of medical school, every young doctor has to take a Hippocratic oath, which part of it is that their mission is to care for sick children, sick people.
Yeah.
And he took it seriously, and he never accepted any money. But people went around it. So they, for example, my grandmother was open a door, and there was a pack of cookies, or there was a preserve, or
barter.
in the
Barter, yes.
right,
Yeah.
or in the
They paid
summer, the people brought fruits, and they never said, "Tell the doctor this is from me." No, it was
Understood.
Right.
That's what it was, yeah.
And every time when he came to my room when I was doing homework and says, "Come, I have something for you," I knew that it's something sweet.
I think, yes, just, Elizabeth, I think that if you're a young person, and that her grandfather must have been maybe a teenager at the time when they noted that he was brilliant in math and he was brilliant in science, and when a guidance counselor or a teacher tells you how good you are and you would be a wonderful whatever, I think you believe them at that age. And the fact that the whole community was behind them was such a great honor. I think that would just, you would walk around saying, people believe in me, and I'm gonna be a teenager.
That's
Not
true.
Not ever thinking of anything else.
But that's true. But when you think about her story, right? Her father wanted her to be a doctor, and she wanted to play the piano and be a musician. And she even though her father, who was so special to her, wanted her to do that, she said, no, I want to do piano. So I wondered, as I was reading this, did her grandfather have a fabulous, talent for something? And somehow he said, no, I can't do that because I've been chosen to be a doctor. So that's why I was just curious when I read that passage, because your story was very much that your father wanted you to be a doctor, but you chose, no, that's not what
And
I
I
want to do.
I was never feeling sorry for my decision.
Exactly, and you say that in the book. But I'm wondering about your grandfather, if he, because usually musical talent runs in family, if that was something that came.
No, they both played instruments.
Yes.
My father played violin,
Yes.
and he studied with one of the. There was a man in Odessa by the name post-Stalin, and now the Odessa Music School carries his name since then.
Yeah.
And he taught my father, and he also taught some, maybe the best violinist of 20th century, David Oistrach. He taught him too,
Yeah.
and he took my father because of his excellent pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just thought, as I was reading, I was like, "Wow, this is funny. And this bird, he's a doctor. He's been chosen to be that. But did he want to be that? I mean, I get it that it's such an honor, especially as a teenager. Someone says you're gifted. We want to take all our resources to make you our doctor. But what if that person doesn't want to be a doctor? Like, did they have a choice to say thanks for the honor, but no thanks, or whether? Anyway, it was just a thought I had. Yeah.
Helen, you have a question?
Have accepted a non-Jewish child, have treated a non-Jewish child
All the time.
all the time?
We live in Horlivka. This is such a hole in the ground, such a place.
It's an industrial
So he would accept, but it wasn't the other way around.
No. There are two different things. Before the revolution, there were Jewish communities and they were separate from Gentile communities.
Okay.
After the revolution, all became one.
I see.
Right.
So after 1917.
So,
After 1917, Jews could go to universities, and actually my mother and my father and my grandmother and my grandfather paternals, they all went to medical school in Odessa.
well, tomorrow I'm going to the doctor, so I'm going to take a chicken with me.
See how far you get.
Chicken is holding your insurance card. That may work out.
We do have one more passage, okay? And
Here, you want me to talk this up?
which one?
This is how he saved lives.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one.
Okay.
185, 185, 186.
No. This is
Oh,
one.
this is about your.
This is on 97. This is 86.
Okay, all right, 97.
Okay. So this is about my grandfather, who was a pediatrician. During the post-war period, when they came back from evacuation, they came back to the same place a little town near Odessa by the name Pervomaisk. So my grandfather admitted to the hospital not only sick children, but also children malnourished from the years of war. He admitted these children against the hospital rules. During mealtime, especially the main meal of the day, my grandfather stood guard in the kitchen, making sure the kids were properly fed. He set up rules about food consumption and staff regulation. If soup was left after the children had eaten, the staff were allowed to take the soup home to their families. However, the main course, which included meat, had to be redistributed to the children until every morsel was gone. And
And that's what's happening today in the Ukraine. The children are suffering greatly. And there's
Yes.
going to be great malnutrition again. And it's like history being repeating itself.
as I said before, after the war, my grandfather saved the lives of many children by nurturing them in the hospital. Miraculously, more than 70 years after the war, I met one of them. At a dinner party at a friend's house in New Jersey, and a man named Stanley sat across the table from me. We started a conversation about our backgrounds. Stanley's family came from Ternopil, a city in western Ukraine, formerly of Poland, and occupied by the Germans during the World War II. Stanley's parents, brother and sister were sent to the ghetto in Ternopil. To leave the ghetto was forbidden, and anyone who was caught escaping was executed. Both Stanley's brother and sister used to sneak out of the ghetto to find food. One unlucky night, they were caught and shot by the Nazis. After their death, Stanley's parents ran away from the ghetto to a nearby village. There, Ukrainian villagers hid them in an underground pit for a sum of money. After several months, the villagers asked me to leave. From there, they fled to the forest where Stanley was born. When the Russian army captured Ternopil on April 15, 1944, they established a displaced person camp in Pervomaisk. Stanley and his parents were among the survivors sent there. Before Stanley told me his story, he asked me where my family is from. I answered vaguely, my mother's family is from a little known town near Odessa. What is the name of the town? Asked Stanley. When I said Pervomaisk, he asked what they did for a living. I told him that my grandfather was head of the children's hospital there. Stanley stared at me in disbelief. Then he continued his story. When my parents and I arrived in misplaced person camp, I was sickly and malnourished. I believe it was your grandfather who took me to the hospital to nourish me back to health. He saved my life. Now, both of us stared at each other in awe. Goosebumps ran over my body. That was what my grandfather meant when he was telling me God had a mission for me in Ukraine. I remember asking him why, in my family we always were thinking to leave Russia to go to the West. And here my grandfather came from Germany, and before that from Switzerland, he came into Russia. So I asked him, why did you come back? Why you didn't? You could even marry your wife, take her back to Switzerland. Why did you stay in Russia and then later in Ukraine? And his answer was always, God had a mission for me there. That was the mission for me.
And knowing the mission, being aware of it is so surprising, you know. But you seem to think there was a mission for you in music, and your father seemed to think there was a mission for him to escape. I mean,
To take
it
us
was
out.
clear, okay? Are we ready to wrap up, or you want me to do that one last one?
If you want to.
Okay. You know, each of us wants to protect our families, all right? We do it in different ways. Sometimes we don't mention things that are unhappy at home to protect our families. Sometimes, you know, we yell at them. We do all kinds of things, I don't know, to protect our families. But Anat's adventure was quite different. She actually saved her family, and so I'm going to read that part, okay? She's too modest to read this. Right? Aren't you modest to read this?
I don't know what to say.
Proof there, okay. All right. First of all, note that by this time they are not any longer in the Ukraine, you're in
Vilnius.
Vilnius, which is where?
Lithuania.
Lithuania, Vilnius. It's the most European town, you know, it's where your former tenant lived, yeah. And when I mentioned the fact that I knew about Vilnius through you, and they said, oh my God, how do you know it? I mentioned all the different parts, you know, because it was a beautiful, I don't know, did you like that section? Did you get to that section?
Yes, yeah,
In
it was good.
Vilnius, where for the first time, Anat heard Jewish people speaking Yiddish out loud in the streets, dancing, singing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And it was a totally different experience there, okay? So, and one of the things that Anat's father, who was quite heroic, was doing was teaching Jewish people how to be Jewish.
Preparing them for living to Israel.
Okay, preparing them to live in Israel. Language-wise, culture-wise, you can say something about this because I wasn't there, you were, okay?
Oh, we were reading Solzhenitsyn.
They were
works
reading certain books, Solzhenitsyn's
in,
book, okay?
Yeah, in self-published, published on very thin paper which cigarettes are made from, right? And
So that they
then
can roll them.
the whole book could be rolled into big cigarette and put in a pocket and given to people.
Wow. So they would learn about the Gulag, they would learn about so many different things, though,
Yes.
right? Okay.
So it was all this material.
But of course, this was
in
not
our
allowed.
house. No.
It was forbidden,
It
and
was
so,
a road to Siberia.
right, it was the road to
If it
Siberia.
could be found.
And so one of the students, one person was introduced to your Anat's father as willing to learn and used to come to the house and seemed to be interested.
David,
And it
what's his
turned
name?
out to be,
David,
his name
right?
was David, and he turned out to be what was it called? A
Schmecker.
schmecker.
Schmecker in Yiddish is a stinker.
A stinger traitor, basically, he was a traitor. He squealed, he was part of the KGB. They were always being followed by the KGB, okay? Okay, yes, so, as a result, Anat's father and as well as mother were stopped, arrested, brought to jail, etc., and this is the section. Almost, I should say, okay? One cold afternoon, right after David's last visit, the KGB arrived at the outpatient clinic and arrested Papa. Mama was also taken from work. I was at home, waiting for my parents. How old were you then? 18, okay. The clock was ticking. It was getting late. Minutes passed like hours. I knew something must be wrong. When they were still not at home by 9 o'clock, I concluded that they had been taken. I knew the apartment was filled with incriminating evidence. These materials were hidden behind the books in the glass-fronted bookcase. Frantically, I ran for the suitcase, the largest one I could find, and started throwing the materials into it. Mama came back later at night, exhausted from her ordeal. She could barely speak. I showed her the suitcase. I collected all I could find. What should I do with it? Luba, no materials should be found in this apartment. You have to bring the suitcase to this man tomorrow. She wrote an address on a piece of paper. Tomorrow morning, deliver the suitcase there. I had many questions for Mama. Where was she interrogated? Who interrogated her? What were the questions like? Was she scared? Was she threatened or blackmailed? Did she give them any information, any names? But Mama didn't want to talk. She just cried and cried. We were extremely anxious and worried about Papa, but hoped the KGB would release him that night. What were they doing to him? I couldn't believe that what I was reading in Solzhenitsyn, the Gulag Archipelago, was happening to us, to Papa, this very moment. The next morning, when I saw KGB agents getting out of their car and walking towards our building, I grabbed the suitcase and fled to the basement. Mama remained in the apartment. When the agents arrived, they raided our apartment. While they were there, I sneaked out the basement and ran to the bus stop. While I was rushing, trying to find the house Mama had told me about, I kept looking over my shoulder, fearful of being followed. When I was sure I wasn't followed, I rang the bell. The bell that I wanted. I waited, A man opened the door. His jaw dropped in disbelief when he saw me with the suitcase. He figured out immediately what was inside. I can't take that, he said. I will give you an address, and that person will take the suitcase. He wrote down the address and the bus number for me to take, and I left. I felt as if I were in a spy movie. I had to travel quite a distance, and by that time the suitcase felt as if it weighed a ton. Also, this address was not easy to find. Finally, I found the house, a single house in a suburban village. I knocked. A person whose face I couldn't see opened the door just enough to get the suitcase through, and then slammed the door in my face. And I, in my naivete, planned to ask that person to use their bathroom. It was twilight by the time I reached home, where I found my parents sitting on the sofa, having a silent conversation. Later that evening, I overheard Papa asking Mama if she'd given the KGB any names or other information. No, the only one I gave them was David's. I said that he was the only frequent visitor to our house. Unlike Mama, Papa was ready to talk. Here is what he told me. His interrogation started late in the evening. Papa and the interrogators were the only two people in the room. Who gave you the material you're distributing? Papa named a few people, all of whom had already left for Israel. The interrogator became irritated. He didn't like Papa's answers. Why are you giving me the dead souls? He yelled. Where will I give live souls for you? Replied Papa. They were my friends who gave me the materials. Name the people who came to your house and the people who you're in contact with. Besides David S., no one, etc., etc. So he was always strong, even in the face of the KGB interrogation. And he did have a starvation. At one point, he was held for much more than a day or so. And if you read the book, you'll see what happens as a result of that.
He started for 10 days.
10 days. He was starving for 10 days. And so that completes our
Fran,
passages. Yes, yes.
Hi, I was struck by how sad it was that Natan could not go to Israel. He chose not to go to Israel. I'm just wondering, did you ever have any communication with him again?
Yes.
Oh, you did?
And I still have communication.
In the interim, of course, she married wonderful Joseph and has 3 lovely children who are here. And therefore, okay. Yes, John.
Well, that's sort of what I wanted to ask. I don't want to spoil the sequel, but
The sequel.
The sequel.
but I just want a little follow up on what happened next. Like, you went to Israel, you obviously at some point came here, you met, like, give us a quick synopsis of what happened after you got to Israel at that point with your life, if you can, in a nutshell.
So what happened first, as everybody, we went to Ulpan to study Hebrew.
What year was it?
1972. So my parents studied Hebrew there. I didn't go to classes. I went to the beach. I went later, 2 months after that I went to University Ulpan with my peers. I started in Academy of Music, then I met my future husband, and I had 2 children in Israel, and then we came here. He was invited from Bell Labs to work for Bell Labs after he completed his PhD, and we're still here.
Is your husband a doctor?
But he was a PhD in physics. You know, yeah, I understand about the sequel, but
We were left wanting more.
but to write about good life, it's nothing
That's
to write
true.
about
That's
good
true.
life. Right.
Less drama.
Yeah, no dramas there.
Right.
Right.
A good reason not to write a sequel.
Right. But I plan to write a different book, also non.
Not biographical.
Not biographical.
Yeah.
Okay, we want you to know though that this is a show that needs to go on the road. And if you know of a book club, another book club, a library, a synagogue, a church, who would be willing to invite Anat and where the night train ends to discuss it, we'd be most pleased. Okay, so if you want to talk with Anat about that, you certainly can.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay? Couple of other questions. My book club is here. They have a wonderful group of people who sacrificed a book so that they can read this one and buy it and Kindle it and do whatever they want. Who would be interested in this book, do you think? What's the audience? Do you think it's everybody, nobody? What do you think?
I think you should have young people read the book.
Yeah.
I thought it was always a good YA book too.
Yes.
Why do you say that though, Elizabeth?
Because I think that we as Americans don't do a good job with history and teaching the children world history. We learn a lot about American history.
What went on?
But for me, it was that way. When I grew up here and then I moved away and I learned more world history away than I did ever here. And my husband, who's from another country, also feels that way. So I think that it'd be great to teach children about this part of history. And it's really written in a way that I think children would be able to follow, read it, enjoy it, not feel like it's too didactic or, I think it would be a good thing for children. Like I plan to have Dario read it. My son is 11. He's very much interested in world affairs. So I told him I have a book for you. So I wonder what he'll think about it. I'll let you know, Fran.
I felt the same about my sister. I'm giving her this for Christmas. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's for anybody, only because today Ukraine is so relevant. The people who are living in Ukraine have proven to be heroic and brave and courageous, and I think Anat exemplifies that in many ways,
Yes.
actually. You could have been the first Ukraine, to come here and really exemplify all of those qualities that the Ukraine people are now showing to the world, actually.
And I think that the book, going on with that, I often wonder why it is that the Ukraine people have so much fire in their belly. But when you read about the daily life and the daily, the arrests, the injustices, the prejudice, we could go on and on and on. Nobody wants to live like that. That's why China is protesting. That's in Iraq. I mean, all over the world, people are begging for freedom. And that's what this book is about, really. And we didn't really get to the second leg so much, and that was Anat's father's. We just read that little passage. But his journey began so many years before. He tried over and over and over again. And throughout the book, you see his going to different synagogues, visiting different cities, and trying to find out how in the world he could get out and get what is known as the exit visa. Okay, and rejection and rejection and rejection. And finally, okay, there are two parts where history intersected with Anat's life. One was in the beginning, and if it were not for the death of Stalin, Anat would not be here, and that's a section that you'll read about. And number two, the irony of it, Nixon's visit
Right.
to the Soviet Union made it possible for the committee to say, okay, get rid of him, exit visa here, sign it, and, and then he was allowed to leave. So it was those 2 points in history where something happened in Anat's family's life.
Anat, can I ask you something? Had
I
your,
call it 2 miracles. Stalin died very close to the date when all the Jews who were left in Russia after the war were supposed to put on trains and transported to Birobidzhan. This is far east, like right across from Japan. And I was a year old, and my mother was sure I would not survive the trip. This is more than 2 weeks on a train, cold, no food.
But you must read the book, I think, to understand what happened.
Yes.
Let's not give anything away, okay?
You're doing a good job.
Right, okay, all right. Is there anything else we need to say? I think we covered it all, all right? Please feel free. We are now going to serve, we have to get rid of the appetizers that we're gonna have dessert, okay, and coffee. So relax, chat, chat, chat.
How is it they can change your name from to Anat? And why did you do that?
No, the artist invented that. Yeah.
My last name
He's there.
in Russia was
Yeah, take one more of these. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is a diaspora name. And we wanted to have Israeli name.